So take a moment, those of you who've just joined us, to remember why you show up to classes like this. And really set a positive intention for your time this morning. And we can recite the four measurables just to set a tone, if I can find them. I'm sure most of you know them. Do I remember how to do this? May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. It's good to see everybody. So the topic for today is, what is it? Joy. How to start increasing the joy.
Finding joy in everyday life.
In everyday life. Well, that's all there is, isn't there? There's nothing but everyday life. So trying to find ways to be aware of the joy that is already there, that's available to us. If we develop the habit of it, is something that's useful, you know. So I'm admitting people. So anyway, who wants to just say hello to each other? I need to see yes, no, who cares?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back, Venerable Tendrin. Welcome to the
Hello,
meeting.
everyone.
Hello, welcome back.
Hello, everybody.
Back, Venerable Tendrin. So happy to
Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Yes. Hello, Rata. Hello, everybody. It's great to see you and Nani. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, Venerable Tendrin.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for being here. So, all righty.
Morning, everyone, and welcome back, Venerable Tendrin. It's great to see you.
So, I've had the month off, but it's still just everyday life. So, so joy. So so this idea of joy. So we want to get an idea of what is joy. You know, we often talk about happiness in Buddhism, you know, that sort of the purpose of life is to be happy, basically because, you know, there's nothing wrong with our desire to be happy, you know, with this idea that being happy is better than being mad or sad or any of those things, that it's just, you know, but we really want to get underneath what is it meant by that, you know, what do we mean? And so joy, like in His Holiness's, the Book of Joy, His Holiness and Desmond Tutu, you know, joy seems to, they just chose the word joy, not, you know, the Book of Happiness, you know, and so the reason for that is this idea of that We're looking for something deeper than the, temporary happiness of getting, tasting food that we find delicious, or having a pretty day, or, those kinds of things. But just what is it that sustains us? What makes it, what is it that, at the end of our lives, say, when we reflect back, what gives us a strong feeling of satisfaction? Allowing us to perhaps let go a little easier when the time comes, And so it's that sense of the different joys. It's also what can sometimes keep us, grasping. So we have to be careful about that. So we want to really look at what does this mean, joy? Because if it's just merely, experiencing something pleasant, what do we have to do to attain that? Yes, that's a question.
Open the refrigerator and get a jar of jam.
Yes, preferably with an English muffin to match. So yeah, so we're really good at that, aren't we? We kind of know how to get that kind of experience of pleasantness. And we get frustrated if there's nothing available to us to have that experience of pleasantness. But so joy, or this idea of, even when we talk about, that everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering, the kind of happiness we're talking about in these kinds of phrases isn't the joy of opening the refrigerator and finding cheesecake, or the joy of opening the refrigerator and finding just the most perfect watermelon or perfect mango or the perfect whatever. I guess we don't find those in the refrigerator. But all of you have mango trees in your backyard, that there's this, that's not really what we're looking for. And that's why when we keep feeding that sense of need, of wanting to feel better or feel more pleasant or feel more comfortable, or that's just doesn't last very long, because it isn't actually even beginning to touch on what it is that we're really seeking. So we really want to get a better we want to not mistake temporary happiness, temporary pleasantness, temporary delight, temporary, all those, things we experience when we have everything go our way. We get everything we want to eat. We get to do activities we like all day, whatever it is, or we get to see the people we love. That's not what we're talking about when we wish for others to never be separated from the happiness that is without sorrow. What do you think?
I'm just thinking that, well, what you're saying is truth, that, I think that I want something really bad. And I think this particular chocolate or cake is just going to make me feel so good. And every single time I realize that 2 seconds after I finish the bite, it's already not enough, and I already want more. And thereafter, I'm not satisfied. And thereafter, it takes me a tremendous willpower not to want it more. So I know that taking that line of action just doesn't it only gets me more dissatisfaction than I had. I thought it wasn't going to be like that. I thought if I was anxious, I would, it would just ease the anxiety and make me feel a little better. It's not true for me.
Thank
And
you,
so,
Graciela.
yeah.
So Bobby, did you want to add to that?
I did. Thank you. Hello, everyone again. I find that when I increase my gratitude for the simpler things, I get more joy rather than trying to get more and more in the bigger things, more joy. But on the flip side, sometimes I think, and I've been very lucky that I've, in the materialistic world, I'll say that, things worked out pretty well and still working out pretty well. And I think I get a little confused with, well, what the heck? Hey, if all this temporary stuff lasts for the next several decades, what the heck? Ride the good wave and the good life.
Yeah.
It goes back and forth with me, but I understand. I understand the premise of more joy out of the simple things rather than, a new car, a bigger house, another swimming pool sort of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is an important point, that we want to, it isn't that we want to stop enjoying the good life. That's not what it's about. It's not about saying, oh, well, chocolate's terrible because it didn't fix my life, or there's no point, to eating ice cream because it doesn't fix my life, or there's no point to, it isn't about that. And that is the point, is that there's a difference between enjoying things and thinking that they're going to make us happy, because they're two different things. So this experience of pleasantness or unpleasantness or neutralness that we experience moment to moment is not what determines whether we're content or happy or joyful. Isn't that interesting? So we want to become very aware of when we actually feel joyful, so that we can start recognizing what ways of thinking and what activities and what speech, so that our thoughts, our words, and our actions are better conditions for this inner sense of well-being. So it isn't something that we are trying to find in external things. So we can understand it's an inner process. And it's not so different from many of the things we talk about in terms of mind training, of really understanding that it is the way in which we respond to external conditions that determines whether or not we're going to increase our suffering or increase our boredom or increase our happiness or joy or enjoyment. So it's really helpful when we're trying to really, approach the day more open to the possibility that there are the experiences of joy also, not just the tedium of everyday life, We want to start looking at how do we approach the day? where do we start from? What is, we do this, we have different starting points probably for different activities. So it's helpful to look at, because right now most of us are doing a whole bunch of stuff from home, and so the location doesn't change, but we want to see if our attitude changes depending on what activity we're about to be involved in, whether it's eating a meal or, getting back to work or watching TV or playing cards or, whatever it is, doing the laundry. We want to start being able to be aware of what is our starting point. Where does our mind go with our everyday activities? Do we have a starting point of dislike when we have chores to do, and that's why we call them chores, right? So when it's laundry or cleaning the house or washing the dishes or whatever it is, we want to start being, we have a bigger opportunity to have, a sense of well-being if we're aware of where we are, so we can see how our thoughts influence that. Because we already know, we talk about it enough, and it's, it's not rocket science, that the way we're thinking affects whatever's happening. So that if we're really angry and we're caught in anger, then it sort of doesn't matter what's happening. We're not happy. We don't really taste good food. We don't really, experience pleasant music. We are just not happy because we're angry. And that influences everything else. So things that we normally might enjoy, we don't. So we know how this works. We know that the mind, where we're caught, is going to influence how we experience the next moment. So it's very interesting to uncover what is our starting point, because we already have them. These are habits. Just like we have the habit when we're hungry and we you open the refrigerator door, we have a habit of looking for particular things. The things that other people who live in the house put in the refrigerator don't come, we're looking for, whatever it is we set out to look for. So we want to see how we may have some habits of mind that are blocking our ability to experience joy every day. So we want to be able to be more informed. Oh, Jack, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I find joy when I try to make my 2-year-old happy, which is easy to do, much easier than most adults.
Like yourself, for example.
Yeah, but when I'm successful at making somebody else happy, it's very nice. And I have the most success with my 2-year-old.
And so this is an interesting point, just an observation. That some of what you're expressing is you have to be successful for it to bring you joy. So we want to keep that in mind, So it's because there are going to be days due to other circumstances, like when, the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old is not feeling well, where it doesn't matter what you do, there's not going to be a lot of happiness in response because they're not feeling well. you know. So but so if our well-being, our joy depends on their response, we're going to be disappointed. So we have to really go even deeper than that, go to another level of awareness. So I thought this was an appropriate quote for this weekend. So the suffering from a natural disaster we cannot control, but the suffering from our daily disasters we can. We create most of our suffering, so it should be logical that we can also have the ability to create more joy.
Can you bring that back again? I could take a picture. Thank you.
Sorry, not fast enough. Got it?
Yes, thank you.
Here's another one for you. It simply depends on the attitudes, the perspectives, and the reactions we bring to situations and to our relationships with other people. When it comes to our personal happiness, there is a lot that we as individuals can do. I think this is an interesting perspective, that His Holiness preferred the last 5 decades of refugee life. It's more useful, there's more opportunity to learn, to experience life. Therefore, if you look at it from one perspective or one angle, you feel, oh, how bad, how sad. But if you look from another angle, it's the same tragedy, the same event. You see that it gives me new opportunities. So it is wonderful. So this is that deeper level, you know, of not looking at how many times during the day do we have the experience of pleasant, or how many times during the day do we have the experience of unpleasant, or how many times we just feel like there's nothing to feel at all. That's not, that doesn't have to be our source of feeling good or feeling bad. It's our perspective on what is meaningful about life, what is fulfilling, what's actually fulfilling, and not just a temporary Band-Aid on an itch or a hurt or a little bite, you know, which is what we do with things like food or music. You know, we turn on the radio, we change channels, we do, you know, or TV shows or whatever our different ways of distracting ourselves from moments we don't like. You know, instead, you know, so one of the, in this book, I'm using this book as a reference point. They have this book of joy they came up, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu came up with 8 pillars of joy. And so the first pillar is perspective. You know, is being able to look at things from many different angles and recognizing that what angle we're looking at something affects how we experience it or how we judge it. So perspective, humility, humor, acceptance, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity are the different things we're going to be speaking of over the next few weeks. to understand how building and understanding these different elements can really help us be aware of more of the moments of joy that are present. So right now we're talking about perspective. So like if you come from a perspective of gratitude, like Bobby was saying, that if we have this idea of being, when Jack thinks about his grandchildren, and there's this sense of, how wonderful it is, how fortunate I am that I live near my grandchildren, and I'm able to see my grandchildren, that they, I can delight in their company and blah, 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 that's something that can, help us. The more we're able to have gratitude for the good stuff is helpful. So that's a change of perspective, that you're just, you're not looking at what's wrong. So gratitude's a way of looking at what's we can rejoice in. No. Another perspective is when we come at things from the perspective of what's in it for me. Oops, I have a loose light bulb. And that perspective puts everything into a narrow focus of, there has to be something I get in order for this to be a desirable event. And most of us are pretty familiar with the ways that this doesn't work, but has it changed how we act? That's the bigger question, So that's one of those ways in which we want to start looking at, do I come from that perspective? Or, surely sometimes we do. And so we want to look at, when we are coming from that perspective, is it effective for our happiness, for our sense of well-being, for our sense of meaningfulness? Or is it starting off, are you able to see what is a potential condition for joy when that's your perspective? So we want to understand the obstacles, why coming from the perspective of me, 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 why that's an obstacle.
I think I get more pleasure and joy out of, giving to other people as opposed to putting myself first. Because then I end up feeling very selfish. I had a question about the 8 pillars of joy. Are those in order of importance or not?
I don't know that I think it's that you need them all.
Right, but I just wondered if they put them in terms of, what's more important. Because I noticed generosity is at the bottom of the list, so maybe they didn't. They just listed them, But you can get into a real self-serving situation like depression. You can take that, to a, you can master that quite well. And that's really, you're focusing on yourself, focusing. That's where all the focus is. So I learned that, if you pick up the phone and you call somebody or you distract yourself in that fashion, and not talking about your depression, but just bringing a little bit of joy into somebody else's life, that's a wonderful cure-all. So I think that's where you get into the problem that you mentioned. Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, do you spend every moment with that knowledge as your operating force. So if we create a list of things, you know, like Jack said, you know, when he's trying to make his grandchildren happy, that there's a joyfulness in that attitude, or he gets a sense of joy from doing that. And Marianne says, you know, when you start a conversation with someone, you know, it's if you're thinking about them or you're doing something for them, that feels. So, okay, so do most of us intellectually get that idea that helping others is a source of joy? We have a couple of thumbs up. Okay. Now, how many people live their life this way, moment to moment? So we want to see the contradiction between our intellectual knowledge, our wisdom that we already have, and our actual activities. So that when we're getting ready to do something, or when we wake up and we're not looking forward to our day, then we can use our inner wisdom to counter the negative attitude we're starting with. You know, because this is where we can have perspective on it. If I'm just thinking about myself, then yes, this day doesn't look too appealing. You know, some people spend every work day like this, and so they just wait for the weekend. That they put all their life on their free time. You know, and that, you know, even the thought of that is kind of depressing. You know, so it's just, you know, this is one of those things we want to look at in our own things. We want to become aware of it. So how do we do that? How do we become aware of our attitude?
Introspection. Watching a mind.
Yeah.
Just watching.
And what are the clues? So when we watch our mind, what can tell us what, you know, what our expectations are, whatever, you know, how can we see where our starting point is?
I think it's being aware of how you feel, analyzing, you know, and watching and listening to, being aware of what you're reading, even getting an email, and how you feel around certain people, especially people that are extra sensitive. They kind of soak up that like a sponge. Just being very mindful of the energy you allow into your life. And if you do that, I think with enough repetition, practice, you know, you get the clue. You know, that just certain people aren't good to be around, and watching certain things agitate you, and trying to cut that out of your life, or just being mindful of what's going on. Sometimes we don't even know what we're watching. We're just sitting there and watching, and it gets into our consciousness, believe me.
Bobby?
Or me, am I unmuted?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Okay. For me, it's my practice. Several years ago, I remember I'd gotten a new car, and I was like, this is nice. And then I was sitting outside, and I saw what I hadn't seen before, this family of turtles. And I just had the biggest smile on my face. I just felt good. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm starting to get it. The people around me in my family would say, oh, wow, that's a great comment. Yeah. And I just had a good, easy feeling. So through my practice, I feel the more calm and peaceful my mind becomes, the happier, more joyful it becomes overall, rather than, not to say I don't have those spikes of joy with, you know, family members or something good happening, or if there's some sort of, you know, doing well financially, blah, blah, blah kind of stuff. Thank you.
So this, so what we want is a method to be able to cultivate the habit of coming from a perspective, from an attitude that encourages well-being, as opposed to an attitude that encourages disappointment or just, same old, a blasé attitude. So we want to, develop activities that help us not forget to do, literally it's about, instead of it's really about recognizing the habits we already have. So you can pick activities, like you may have activities, like maybe it's for you, it's work, or maybe it's household chores, or it's cooking, or it's, whatever it is, but you really, hate it or don't like it, or just feel like, oh God, do I have to do that again? Blah, blah, blah. Do you always have a bad attitude? So those are, that makes it very obvious, those situations. And if you at least start with something really obvious, it's going to be easier to uncover what is it you're thinking that makes this task unbearable. And then trying to look at it from different angles, bringing perspective to it, bringing gratitude to it, bringing compassion to it. There are, all these 8 pillars of starting to learn, but one place to start is with your perspective, so it's sort of like, if you don't like, name some things you don't like to have, but you do have to do anyway. Oh, y'all are just all happy.
I hate to sew. I'll
Okay.
scotch tape and staple things before I sew.
Okay.
Bookkeeping and accounting.
Okay. Do you have to do any of that?
Yes.
Okay. So if you like everything you do, hey, that's great. What happens when you're faced with something you don't like to do?
My son said to me a couple of weeks ago that something that he's trying to get into the habit of is whatever happens, his responses should be good. And, I thought that was interesting.
That gets at acceptance. Is another one of the pillars is acceptance. Because it is what's happening. So the more we can, whatever's happening, have an openness to whatever can be positive about it. So one of the things to do when you're working with perspective is to look at different things and see how you make a list of what is positive about this. So what's positive about having to get prepared for a hurricane? Beth.
Well, in the past,
Oh, Jack.
you
Beth.
never even knew it.
Jack.
I'm sorry.
Beth.
Anything to do with household chores, anything I always replace. I don't have to, I get to. So many things I get to. Everything with the house. So many people would be so glad to prepare your house for a hurricane.
Yes. I mean, this is the thing, to have what you need to be prepared. How lucky are we? And where does that come from? Having these things? From a lot of those other things you don't like to do. Like doing your job, which provides the funds to be able to have the bottles of water in your house. house. Having a house is handy. You know, having the four walls and the floor and the ceiling can be very useful in a storm. You know, so it's this, you know, so that gets back into this idea of gratitude. But it's also this idea that having what we need isn't universal. And sometimes we're the ones who don't have what we need. And sometimes we are the ones who have what we need. So it's, you know, but being able to recognize that we are able, you know, like one of the things that I always have to think about when I'm trying to do my taxes, I had a lot of trouble with the software for my taxes this year. I couldn't get TurboTax to work. I couldn't get it to pull up last year's return, so I didn't have to redo all that work. But this understanding that I am extremely fortunate in being able to have the software to do the taxes, to understand even at the slightest level what you're supposed to do, you know, but I kept thinking about people who are either have gotten past being able to understand things like tax forms because they've aged out visibility, you know, like Medicare forms. And then, you know, and people who, you know, just, you know, don't understand government ease, you know, the language government documents are in, you know, and how fortunate I am that I can do my taxes myself at all. I mean, that's just, you know, it's just really cheaper and convenient. So, you know, it's this way of really remembering all the time that the things we value, like being able to take care of ourselves, is something we value. You know, so the skills we have are something that we can rejoice in because it gives us an ability to deal with whatever is. You know, so if you're a good problem solver, you know, that's very helpful when their problems arise, you know. If you're good at encouraging others, you know, then it's wonderful that, you know, if someone comes to you when they're feeling discouraged, that you can, you know, provide this for them. You know, so it's a matter of really just reframing the starting point of seeing something that we do as something we have to do instead of something that we can do. You know, and we choose to do. Because it isn't that we can't not do it. We cannot do it. It's just as a consequence if we don't do it. And we have to decide whether we're going to choose the consequence or not. So a lot of it is just really just coming back to, you know, is the resistance I have to this activity worth the price I'm paying for it? Because we pay a price for our non-acceptance. We pay a price. These are emotional prices we pay for our resistance, for our dislike, for our intolerance of what is unpleasant or boring. Or the fact that when it comes down to it, feeding our desire for what is pleasant doesn't actually make our life more satisfying. You know, and accepting that fact means that maybe you're going to have to help more people. So, you know, that if you want to be happier and you know that there's a lot more happiness available when you do things for others, then guess what? You need to do more things for others instead of being resistant to that. Oh, I'm tired of that. People always need me. You know, but it's kind of funny when we start thinking about it, how we know these things with our inner wisdom. We've learned these things through our lifetime, and yet we still have counter arguments against them when our schedule is full of these things, these activities that actually are what add up to a sense of well-being and joy, a well-lived life. You know, like some people's argument against, enlightenment, not that they're really arguing against enlightenment, but the idea that everything could just be blissful is that they have a fear that it could be boring. And yet we complain when it's not boring, when we have challenges or different, we've got to recognize all the different ways the way we think about things contradicts our own inner wisdom, and start looking at that and start countering it so that we can, in fact, recognize that in every moment there's an opportunity to feel good. To be okay. This moment's okay. And that comes from within. So we need to discover for ourselves, because it'll be different, a little bit different for each of us, about what does that mean to, help others, or what does it mean that I, actually feel good at the end of a day where I've been helpful to others? What does that look like to me, so that we can start seeing when our attitude's contradicting what we know is true, so that when we can correct it. It's like correcting your motivation. Realizing that your motivation is to just get through this chore as fast as humanly possible. So you can tick it off your list, and maybe correcting it, going, this is my life. I don't want to waste a moment of my life with that attitude. So maybe I will, approach this activity, maybe quickly, but not with an attitude of, I can't enjoy my life until this is finished. So if we have that perspective, if we're starting something with the perspective, I just have to get through this because the next thing will be better, then there can't be any joy in that, in this, whatever it is that this is. Is that making any sense? But we have to be aware of how we think to uncover how we contradict ourselves. So we have to be comfortable pausing and looking at, how am I thinking? What are my thoughts? Am I even thinking about what I'm doing? Am I spending all my time in the past or the future? Or the next thing, which is just the future. It's this, really trying to understand that it is worth our time to pause and correct our motivation, so that we can come from an angle that's going to make best use of whatever it is we're doing, however we're spending our time. So has anybody ever done something with their partner just because their partner likes to do it? Like watch a particular movie or go play miniature golf, or I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, now what's the difference between when you do those things with an attitude of you're delighted to be able to share this time with your partner and do whatever it is they like, or when you have that attitude, oh my God, I can't believe she likes this or he likes that, and we have to do this, and we're doing it, but our attitude the whole time is resentful.
It's hard when, yeah, when you have to do it with the wrong attitude.
Yes, it is hard. So we want to look, when we make a decision to do something, are we creating our own suffering by the attitude we're taking? I'm doing it for you. You mean I have to be happy while I do it for you? Isn't it enough that I just showed up? Of course, no. Of course, it's not enough just to show up, you know? So we really want to be, you know, but we have to always go within. And we have a tendency to look outside of ourselves for, you know, the magic. Instead of recognizing that really the magic is only there if our head's in the right place. You know, that we have to come from a place of openness. You know, if we're doing something that it wouldn't be our idea to do, but we're doing it for someone else, then we have to be open to the possibility that this isn't a waste of our time. You know? And so we have to look. Now, you wouldn't have this, you know, it doesn't help to look at, you know, this is not a waste of my time if you don't think that way. So you have to look at how you think. You have to see what thoughts are going, churning around in the mind. And sometimes with activities we do a lot, and we've been doing, like, say, going to work, you know, which we've been doing our whole adult life, you know, we have to, it's a little harder. We have to really be more patient with letting the awareness come to the forefront on what we're actually thinking, what we're holding to be true. Because we've been doing it so long, we're on automatic pilot. So we don't realize we're carrying this sense of it being a burden, perhaps, or that it's just boring, but you have to get through it, you know? So we want to look. So if we have, and this is why I said, if we know we have things that we have to do and we just dislike it every time we do it, we're not too thrilled, that can be a starting point, because then, you know, it's really obvious we don't like it. So we have to, you know, so we might be willing to really look long enough. But other things that have just become routine for us, but we're, you know, they don't fulfill our lives, we can start looking at, why is it that they don't fulfill our lives? And if we keep looking externally, if we keep saying, well, because the job's not interesting, that's never going to solve the problem. Because, you know, I remember when I was a teenager, my father, he was worried about my older brother about, you know, trying to decide what to major in college or something like that, you know, and he just said, you know, it really doesn't matter. You just have to pick something, because I guarantee you eventually it's boring. You know, that doesn't matter, because if you're going to do it for 40 years, you're going to have boring days. It's just the fact of life, you know? So it isn't about, you know, we have to come from within for it to be meaningful, for it to give us a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. So break them up into little groups, Nicole, if you know how to do that. And just at least four people, you know, or 3 people or whatever. And just talk about, I knew what I was going to say a second ago. Talk about what are ways in which you can take a task that you find boring or tedious, you know, but you have to do anyway. What are different perspectives you can bring to that might make it, that if you start it with that perspective, might help. So share, does that make sense? Anybody have a question about my question? Everybody feel like they know what I'm talking about? Okay, go for it, Nicole. To give them 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it looks like.
Okay, I'll do 10 minutes. So everyone will have to click join a room to.
Yeah, there'll be something on your screen.
Right, so I think you have the option now open. Okay, yes, there you go. Oh, well, hi, guys. Hi. Oh, are we not in a group? Katrina, Brian? Hi. You guys want to unmute? Can you hear me? Anybody? Brian, Katrina, unmute. Uh-oh. Katrina, you there?
Yep, I'm here. I'm holding the baby and trying to get
Okay.
him to sleep.
Oh, the baby.
The baby.
Well, do you want to
Yes.
just,
He's been ill, so I'm just trying to keep him happy, you know.
oh, sweet. How old is he?
11 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not been feeling well, huh?
He had a virus. So we all got to get tested.
Oh, he had the virus?
No, he had a virus.
Okay.
And he got tested. We don't know. None of us know yet.
Yeah. Oh, poor thing. Is he
So
on the other-
I've been listening and oops. Okay, there he goes. Okay.
Okay,
I'm
I'll
gonna
be
mute.
quiet. I'm gonna go check on another room, see how somebody else, or see if it's actually working. Let me see this. All right, welcome everyone as you're slowly making your way back. I'm curious to get some feedback on the breakout rooms. Does everyone like the breakout rooms? Yeah, it's
I
good.
do. And we had a
It's-
great session.
Okay, good. And the other thing is you can always choose to leave, right? You know, you don't have to.
Also, I thought that the timing was very good. How many minutes did you give us?
You know, I forgot because, so I think it was like 8 or 10, I want to say. But yes, I need to get better at the timing.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very
It
good.
was perfect timing.
Yes.
5 minutes isn't enough.
Yeah,
Right.
5
Really.
is enough. No.
By the time you introduce yourself, Zoom, you know?
Okay, cool. Well, handing it back over to Venerable Tendrin, who, there you go, unmute, okay.
So how many complaints do we have about how that went?
Excellent.
It was good.
So we need them to be longer.
No, no.
10 minutes is good.
It was
Yeah,
10.
perfect what we had, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
just a second. If there's more people, sometimes you need a little more time.
Yeah, maybe. I had three people. With 3, the minutes that we got was very good.
Anybody have anything worth sharing? That's what I want to say.
It's interesting how like minds attract, because we all, had the same problem that we were addressing, and we had the same issue that we were dealing with, and we all have the same background, which I found very unusual. Well, like minds attract, I always believe that. So it was really good because we could all work on that particular issue that we're dealing with.
Okay, Bobby?
I heard something in my breakout room that really touched home for me, that so much of it is my ego, that why am I doing this? I had to clean the garage. I can just go pay somebody to do it. I'm more valuable than this kind of thing. So I have to keep in touch with that. I know, that would go on under, I guess, perspective. And what I find, I don't rush through when I have a task that I don't like doing. I procrastinate and leave it forever, which then turns into a mountain. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's like, when was I doing my taxes? On July 12th. Okay, so, but, so this is the thing. So we need to identify things that we either find, really look at our life and kind of see what things, don't seem to cause you any challenges, really. What things seem to constantly, hit you with, this feeling of either resentment afterwards, or you just procrastinate till it becomes a much bigger problem or whatever. So, and then start looking at what is it that I think about this that is making it a bigger problem than it needs to be, and some of it is, ego, in that just we feel like we shouldn't have to do this, or this is, it's just this sense of, entitlement, or, I would love to have servants. I'd like a cook and a masseuse and, maybe even someone to shave my head every so, I mean, of course, but this, but how ridiculous, that if my happiness depends on me having servants, good luck with that. Not happening. Why is it not happening? I never in this lifetime wanted to make lots of money. I mean, I was not a driven person, whereas my dad never wanted to live in the slums again. He grew up in the slums, didn't want to do that again. And he was driven, and he had a lot of good conditions, like the GI Bill after World War II. And he was a white man, he had a lot of good conditions to be able to succeed, and he did. But he was really driven to never have that sense of poverty again. I don't have that. So, You know, I don't do the work to earn the money to have the service. That's a consequence. You know, so it's just this, but understanding that, you know, looking at what it is that we struggle with, and then looking at what perspective do we have that's making this challenging. And I mean, of course, there are things, you know, because we're talking about everyday life. We're not talking about the catastrophes and the really, you know, horrific sufferings that we face from time to time. It's still the same skill set that we need in order to manage those without losing our minds, meaning not losing our peace of mind, you know, having a sense of well-being in spite of having this hardship to handle. But it's this, but if we can't do it with the small stuff, the everyday stuff, it's not very, the odds are not so great we'll be able to do it when something really big arises. You know, so it helps us. So even just knowing that can be one of the perspectives we bring to the task of everyday life, of knowing that being able to tolerate this and perhaps even be able to turn it around to something I also enjoy is a way that can develop the skills I need for those really difficult times that arise, or being able to help someone else through a really difficult time. Does that make sense? So this is the way, you know, we can motivate ourselves to do the work now. Yeah, Joy. Oh, you're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So I thought about what you said to make yourself think of something else when you're doing what I think that's a really good idea. So I was complaining about making phone calls when I don't really want to, but if I can put myself in a different place while I'm doing that, that'd work for me. And that's what you just said. So
yeah. I think it's really helpful. Like one of the strategies that the Buddha, you know, in some of their communities, what became sort of a community practice, is this idea of memorizing 4-line verses. In the Zen tradition, they're called Gatha, or maybe the Theravadan tradition, they're called Gathas. But it's this idea, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche has written a whole book, and it's in our prayer book, how to have the bodhisattva attitude, you know, is really being able to think of something that you use every time you do the activity, like when you answer the phone or when you make a call, you know, to be able to really think about, you know, one I learned was that, you know, that telephone calls allow our voices to reach across thousands of miles. May I make sure that I use my speech, you know, in a loving, kind, useful way, you know, that it's, you know, that it's, you know, it's a wonderful tool we have the technology now to reach to be, I mean, we couldn't have this class at all, you know, that we're able to reach out to people we can't be, that we're not near physically, but you know, so that's really powerful. So do we want our presence while we're using these tools? You know, how do we want that to be? You know, we want to make it a pleasant experience for ourselves and others. We want to, you know, we wanted to use it to solve some difficulty, you know, so it really can help. Yeah, Joy.
Oh, no, I just, yeah, but thank you. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
That was very helpful.
So these are ways in which, if we just even come up with one little phrase to remind ourselves, and we stick it on the Post-it note or put it in the reminders on our whatever, some whatever device we have, so it comes up, you know, that you know, that helps remind us that there is something we want to do here. This is some, you know, that we're doing this, you know, like for me, about the only motivation other than, you know, let's just have servants, you know, is that if, you know, cleaning the house allows me not to live in squalor. And there are many people who have no choice but to live in squalor because they have no walls and ceilings, and that they live separated by tarps, so it's you can't, there's no such thing as having a nice, what we consider a nice clean environment. And then you think about all the ways animals live, all the different environments they live in, and just, really have a perspective of, that this is, and then just don't do it. It's not, or don't do it well or whatever, it's just remembering, though, there's a consequence of not doing it. And since we're choosing to do it because we want to avoid that consequence, that perhaps our attitude about it can be, we can work on having a better attitude, and that this will help remove our suffering. And it all is an inner process. It has nothing to do with whatever the thing is, the activity is. Because we also don't want to spend, reflecting back from our deathbed, thinking about how much time we wasted being angry about having to do this chore. What a waste of our lives. So it's just, and then when we think about how things carry over, so if we're doing something, if we happen to have a day full of tasks that are not our preferred tasks to do, how that can carry over to our attitude in the evening when we've ended that task to the people we live with. So it all is, we're interdependent and we're dependent arisings. And so our attitude in this moment is going to be one of the causes for our attitude in the next moment. So, it's the more we take care, the more that we open ourselves to the potential of having joy in, or a sense of good enough, that can help us with all the moments because they all link up. They're not isolated. So we all have had this wonderful moment of, looks like, skirting a natural disaster. I don't know how the beaches are doing, but so we can, just be okay, this is great. We all, if we're prepared for this one, then we're prepared for the next one because we didn't need it for this one. Every now and then I have to look at my little cans of, pineapple chunks or something and say, don't eat them today. You're saving them for another occasion. So anyway, I did eat a whole bag of almonds this month, so my almond supply is depleted, but that's okay. Anyway.
And also hoping that the storm is as kind to those north of us, like Beth in Jacksonville and Cecilia in North Carolina, so they're all okay.
We will not stop our prayers, just because those of us in Deerfield Beach are south of it. Oh, actually, I don't know where it is at the moment. So it could be headed straight for me, but I haven't had any emergency warnings on my phone. Well, I have one, but it's hours old. So.
Venerable Tendron, I had a question for you
Yes.
about with the joy and in the 6 perfections, the joyous effort that's sometimes called perseverance. Am I wrong in thinking that if you just adapt that, that'll kind of work out? I like to think of when I have stuff that I don't like to do, if I try to put another motivation to it, then it becomes a building of patience. I just try to wrap everything all up at once and nothing goes to waste.
Yes.
Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why joyous effort is often translated as perseverance is actually there's no joy in the word joyous effort in Tibetan or Sanskrit. But the definition is delighting in virtue. So it has a very specific thing. So, if, you know, it's not about the joyous effort of robbing the bank. It's, you know, it's the joyous effort of, say, like benefiting others, helping others, you know, so it's this, or developing patience. So yes, absolutely. This is, you know, the more we can frame things around the kind of values we have, and then, you know, and kind of go, well, you know, I really want to develop patience, and this is an opportunity for that, you know, and recognizing that because when we develop patience around things that we used to not have any patience, it is no longer a condition for impatience to arise. So we've eliminated a source of our suffering, and that isn't from outside. The event's still there, but we've changed our response to it. So it's, you know, this is the process. So the more that we can bring in, you know, oh, you know, I want to develop my kindness. I want to develop my generosity. I want to develop my patience. I want to develop my wisdom, you know, so I'm going to, you know, learn how to do this, and, you know, those kinds of things. All of these things can reinform our activities and put them in a direction that is going to help us, as opposed to be one of those things we regret later. Oh, why did I waste my time on this? You know, it's never a waste of time to develop your patience, your generosity, your kindness, your compassion, your love. You know, none of those things are a waste of time. And it doesn't matter what condition it is that helps you work on that. So yes, if you can come from that perspective, that's, you know, that's going to do it. You know? And all of this will eventually lead to having that perseverance in virtue, because everything you do is coming from that angle. You know, it's not coming from the angle of what's in it for me. I mean, you can be cynical and say what's in it for me is virtue, you know, but we tend to not think of it that way. So, you know, anyway. All righty. So let's take a moment to, you know, rejoice that we're all still breathing. You know, that's a start. Everything follows from that. You know. But also we want to think about, you know, all the people who are not able at this moment to be here or be in a similar situation, you know, that they're having, you know, not pleasant conditions at all. And that can be physical, you know, where they're living, or the weather. If you're in the Bahamas right now, you might be still experiencing terrible tropical storm winds and rain and flooding. And then but there's also the mental suffering, that there are many who are not able to, they have nothing to draw from, you know, at this moment, to alleviate their sense of despair or anxiety or sadness, you know, whatever it is that they are truly suffering on a mental level, and they have nothing to draw from. And so we want to, you know, understand how fortunate we are that we're not caught in one of those circumstances at the moment, you know, and be, you know, have that aspiration to be someone who could help others in those moments someday, so that we can truly be of benefit to others, and not be concerned about what does that mean about our time, you know, where we're not, you know, but that we're just happy to do, because we're so fortunate to have better conditions and have skills to draw from in order to be able to benefit others. You know, so activities like this, which may seem really tiny, you know, just thinking about, oh, how can I make, you know, this chore, you know, a little better. This is what leads us to having, you know, where we're never concerned about little stuff. Our whole lives are focused on benefiting others and how to be of help. So it's you know, this is how we get there. So it's a wonderful thing. It's a good use of our time. So we want to rejoice in that, really feel good about that, oh, I've spent my Sunday morning this way and it was a good use of my time. And I was sharing it with others. So, and then we want to dedicate, hope that whatever positive results arise from these things serve others who are not in good conditions, and that it not exhaust, that this positive results will last until there's no one suffering at all. So we'll read the dedication prayers from Shanti Deva. Here we go. May all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
Thank you, Venerable Tendrin. Just a quick reminder, sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure I get my announcements in about your birthday party this Wednesday. So we're going to have a Zoom party. The link will be on the website homepage on Wednesday, okay? So it's 7 o'clock, and we're trying to make it a little silly hat party too. So grab your favorite hat. We'll bring you one, Venerable Tendrin, unless you have a favorite one.
I may have a hat.
Okay, well, yeah, there you go.
I'll have to look. So,
yeah.
And it's a big birthday.
Yes.
Well, I get Medicare. I'm 65. Yay! Whoever thought it'd be so wonderful to be turned 65. I'm thrilled.
How old were you when you came to the Dharma?
I was old. I was, let's see, it was in 1998. So how many years ago is that? 22?
Oh, wow.
So I was in my 40s. So, yeah.
You're setting the stage for my 40s. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it gets better. If we do the work, it gets better. So anyway, but so yeah, so yeah, it's one of those old birthdays. What other announcements do you have?
Just a reminder about our weekly schedule. The Tuesdays will be the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and then Thursdays we start a new Discovering Buddhism module, Samsara and Nirvana. So that starts Thursday night and will be for the whole month of August and September. And also the links for today, this is for the whole month of Sundays in August. Then the Bodhisattvas will have a new registration, and then Discovering Buddhism will have a new registration for Thursday. And thank you all for coming, and Venerable Tendrin, great to have you back.
Yeah. So give yourself a few extra moments to do the registration bit, before class. And Samsara and Nirvana is about how we get stuck in suffering and how we can be liberated and find peace. So that's the point of that class. So that's all I know. I hope everybody stays safe. I hope the storm, I hope everything is fine up north. In Philadelphia, I think, not Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania was having tornadoes today. So the East Coast is not having a great weather period. So anyway, But stay safe, take care, say goodbye to each other.
Bye.
Unmute and,
Thank
know,
you so much.
Thank you,
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.
meeting for a week.
Everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.